Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome to the start of another reading vlog. This reading vlog I'm really excited about because I'm going to be tackling an author I have simply never read before. That's right, I'm going to be reading my very first Stephen King novel. So without further ado, let's chat about the Stephen King book I'm going to be featuring throughout the entirety of this vlog. So it's no secret on my channel that I am a bit of a scaredy cat, so a lot of Stephen King's most famous works are just simply too scary for me. No hate to those works, but they're just not for me as a reader. That being said though, he recently came out with a new title that I've heard, one, excellent things about, and two, so many of you guys have just told me you think I would really enjoy it, and the style of the book does appear to be something that I would really like. So the book I'm going to be reading is Fairy Tale by Stephen King. This is his newest release, and it is very much, as the name implies, like a modern fairy tale. We follow like a young man who basically inherits a key to a parallel universe, and when he opens the shed where this parallel universe resides, he basically realizes that there is a war being waged between good and evil in this other place, and I think he kind of is transported there. I'm curious about this book. Again, I have no experience with this author at all, so I'm curious to encounter his writing. He's obviously known for horror, and I'm curious to see like how a fantasy book is going to work out with his writing style. This book is long, and it's about 600 pages long, and I'm also curious if this is going to have maybe some horror elements to it. I enjoy like horror and fantasy together. Like I can read some horror, I just can't go all in, if you know what I mean. This also appears to have illustrations, so all in all, I'm curious. This is a beautiful book, and I just want to join the hype train, or I just want to say I've at least read one Stephen King novel in my day, so here we are, ready to read, looking forward to starting it and sharing my experience with you all. Currently Tuesday evening, like I've already wrapped up work, so I have the TV fireplace on, and I am going to just sit down and immediately start reading this book because again, it's long. So I have to stay pretty focused if I'm going to finish it in a timely fashion. Today was also Taylor Swift pre-sale day, and I did not get tickets, so I kind of just want to hide in a book and ignore the world, if you know what I mean. So fireplace is on, book is here, we're gonna get started. I will keep you guys updated on my progress and my initial thoughts. Good news, I've read 50 pages. A fairy tale. And obviously I can't say much about the story so far, but I like the writing style a lot. And I also like structurally how this book is being written so far. We know it's a portal fantasy going in, and I feel like Stephen King's really gonna take his time introducing that to us, which I like. I like when books are slower paced, especially with fantasy, because I feel like it gives you more time to get to know your characters. There's better plot payoff. But basically we're just introduced to our main character, Charlie. And there's basically like chapters, and then within each chapter, it's almost like it's segmented once again. It's very vignette, like we're jumping from scene to scene to scene to scene, but it still has this element of flowing quite well. Charlie is also talking directly to us. It's like written in a reflective style. He's like, let me tell you about what happened, but like we got to start from the beginning sort of vibe. And that beginning is Charlie recounting his childhood. It's complicated. He lost his mother at a very early age, and his father has battled with alcoholism. But he's a really hardworking kid. He's a smart kid, keeps his head down, and his family and his father and him are like in a much better place now. At the beginning of this book, he basically stumbles across like a neighbor, this like old crotchety man who's injured, and he basically saves him, calls the ambulance, and then he begins looking after this man's dog and kind of becoming more entrenched in his life. And that's really where I'm at. 50 pages, like not a lot has happened. We're introduced to Charlie, the small town vibes, and again, this sort of setup. I like it though. It feels very inviting. It feels very emotional, and it's kind of giving me like, it's not a middle grade vibe, but you know when you read a middle grade story that has this sort of like otherworldly element and we're following a very likable main character, it kind of gives me that feeling, but I feel like it's going to be much darker. There's also illustrations at the beginning of every chapter, as you can see, which I like. I think they're really cool. But yeah, I've read 50 pages. I'm gonna obviously read more, but right now I'm gonna go make dinner. So let's begin. I've started dinner. I was TikToking it, so I truthfully forgot to update y'all until now. But it's like a tortellini soup, which is like veggies and stock and stuff. Should be really good. when it gets cold, all I crave is soup. So I'm looking forward to trying this out. And you basically put in cheese tortellinis at the end, which is amazing. I'm also gonna chop up some kale right now. Voila. And soup cam is done. I mean, ravioli soup, tortellini soup, delicious. Enjoyed my delicious dinner, and then I just watched a bunch of Real Housewives of New York and actually started replaying Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. I bought that game a million years ago when it came out, and then just sort of started it, but then moved on. I got distracted basically, and I just had an itch to kind of restart. And I'm so delighted by it. It's exactly kind of what I've been craving, kind of an RPG style game, but kind of a lower stakes one, but I love puzzles and stuff. So anyway, that game was super delightful. I'm going to be playing more, but it's time to get back to Fairy Tale by Stephen King. I even have my faux fireplace up in the bedroom on TV. We're getting nice and cozy in here, Matilda and I. So reading time, it's gonna be a vibe. Hello, good morning. I actually read a lot last night. I also stayed up late. So this coffee is very, very needed and I cannot wait. But let's go ahead and sit down and do a reading update. Hi friends, good morning. So great news. I've read to page 140 of this book and we're still very much in exposition. Stephen King is definitely taking his time setting up our characters and I guess their emotional motivations, because we're still just following Charlie as he's growing closer to this older man, taking care of him. And again, because his tale is told retrospectively, even though everything feels like really wholesome, we know something very tragic emotionally is going to be happening. But it has been nice watching Charlie just get closer to this family, get closer to this older dog and this older gentleman. It's cute. He has now a positive relationship with his father. He's very much like a stand-up kid, like very smart, very driven, very polite, like very perfect, to be honest, but likable. You know, likable in the way that, you know, Percy Jackson is likable, even though Percy Jackson is at least a little silly. I don't know how silly Charlie is, but this guy is definitely trying to be like a classic, nice kid, I guess. So we'll see. We'll see what happens from here. I feel like things are soon to turn. I mean, they've got to. I've read 140 pages. Like, I feel like something is going to happen. And we've had hints that there's something sort of strange about this older man. Not in like a nefarious way, but more like he's very peculiar. So I'm just gonna keep going. I'm still enjoying structurally how this book is written. I'm still enjoying the illustrations. I just don't have much new to say because I've just been in exposition, which has been fine. I think it's gonna work for setting up like emotional stakes and background for our character to work in, but I'm just kind of like, okay, but what's gonna happen next, you know? And lunch is made. I'm physically unwell. Guys, I acquired Taylor Swift tickets, and to celebrate, I got a Starbucks holiday latte. I'm actually gonna sit down now and read more Fairy Tale. I'm on like page 220. I'm actually reading this book really quickly. Even though it's really slow, like the beginning is slow, but I feel like Stephen King has done a good job at creating atmosphere and tension that you know something is coming. And I'm finally sort of reaching that something, and it's interesting and definitely very fantasy, Phantom Tollbooth almost. I really love Portal Fantasy. I loved it when I was a kid. So it's fun to encounter a Portal Fantasy that's adult. In fact, I can't think of, maybe Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, which is one of my favorite fantasy books, is kind of another Portal Fantasy in a way. But anyway, I'm just rambling. I'm really liking it. So cheers. Post-work grocery shop at Costco. We just have a few Thanksgiving essentials we need to pick up for the week. Just your essentials: Christmas lights, 20-pound turkey, and butter and batteries. Guys, I don't know what it is, but that trip to Costco, while delightful, exhausted me. Maybe it was the calm down from acquiring Taylor Swift tickets. I don't know. But I am pooped. But I am now back in bed. I'm gonna read more of this book. As I said, things are starting to get spicy. I don't really have new updates, but I do feel like there has been like subtle fairy tale references in dialogue, and I'm curious now that I'm kind of approaching some of the more fantasy elements if it's going to be, as the name implies, like very fairy tale heavy. I'm curious about it, so gonna read. Hello everyone. I wish I could say good morning, but it is staunchly the afternoon. I just got caught up with work this morning. I also got like 12 hours, not 12. I got 10 hours of sleep last night. I fell asleep so early and kind of like slept to the longest possible length that I could in the morning without being late, if you know what I mean. But hey, I'm feeling refreshed. I'm seeing the 1975 tonight, so it's probably good. I got a little extra sleep. I need to give you guys a reading update. I'm actually currently right now making lunch. Let me show you. I'm making one of my classic bowls. I have some quinoa in here, roasting some broccoli, and then I made turkey meatballs yesterday, which I'm going to heat up and enjoy with some jarred marinara sauce. This is one of those recipes that has a lot of upfront work with making these, but once it's done, it's so easy and fast and super filling. So that's the plan for lunch. Let's go do a reading update. So great news, I would say. I mean, I'm almost halfway through this book. And it's honestly very engaging. We've shifted now to almost like a quest structure. We're following our main character, Charlie, as he's investigating this new world. And it's really giving like whimsical portal fantasy middle grade vibes, but it's scaling it up for, obviously, as I keep saying, like this is an adult fantasy book. And I'm really liking it because of that, because I love like weird magical worlds that characters are kind of exploring, and through them we get to explore too. So this concept is really working out for me. There is also lots of like fairy tale references. He's run into a few characters that almost seem like pulled from various stories, kind of all living together. And there is seemingly this kind of ominous evil force that has infected this land too. But again, a lot of that is still pretty murky as Charlie's trying to figure it out. I'm liking this book. Charlie, as our main character, is a teenage boy, and sometimes I do like have eye roll moments peeing inside of his head, but it's also like one of those things like, can I fault Stephen King for making him like make me want to roll my eyes if he is also a teenage boy? Like, I don't know. But the writing structure of this book has really pulled me in. I haven't had a chance to read today at all, but I am on page 250, and I'm gonna read this afternoon. My hope is to finish it tomorrow. That's the hope. And I'm liking it. And I really feel like I can if I focus myself. I obviously don't have a lot of time to read tonight because of the concert, but between then and now, let's try to get as much done as possible. So lunch is in the oven. We're working on it. I have a few more, I have work obviously I need to do, but in between all that, I'm hoping to also read. And here is my lunch. It's not quite that time until but it is time for me to eat this Pop-Tart and read 20 more pages of this book, do an update, but I have crossed into the 300 page mark threshold. Me giving my absolute worst, like Alexa Chung, circa 2013 impression. I even have like red lipstick on. We're ready to go. Morning, everyone. Let's get a cup of coffee. Did I basically lose my voice at the 1975 last night? To be determined, but the concert was amazing. Came home, ate McDonald's, fell asleep. Here we are. I also want to say I've read 300 pages of my book. I also met some of you guys at the concert last night. It was so cool. Sorry if I'm ever awkward in person. I'm just an awkward person, but I love when people say hi. But I'm gonna read now. Again, I've read 300 pages, so I'm gonna do a reading update first, but I'm really hoping to get a good chunk of the way through this book today. Pokemon also came out today, which might not be significant for many, but it's very significant to me. So I'm kind of like clearing my calendar to enjoy Pokemon, but I'm like waiting for it to arrive. I don't know, it could arrive to upwards of 10 p.m., which would be devastating, but staying positive. Hi, so as I've said, I have reached over the 300 page mark of Fairy Tale. I'm really liking this book. As I've kind of mentioned, it's turned more into a quest story. I'm being introduced to this new like magical alternate world. I'm curious if this is going to be a standalone or not, because I feel like there's a lot to be discovered, or like I feel like a lot could be written here because again, it's like an entirely new place. It definitely has like a dark whimsy to it, Charlie, as he's kind of like doing some very strange things, but it's working well. I don't know if I've also mentioned he's traveling with a dog companion, which I like. I like that it's not solo. I like that he has someone he can kind of like be with. It also really makes sense in context to the plot in terms of why he's doing it and propelling him forward. But the world is weird, and I'm a fan of it. It feels very like, you know, Alice through the Looking Glass, like normal person, normal kid kind of confronting the fantastical and very, very bizarre. So anyway, I'm gonna try to read a very good chunk right now. This book, I wanna say, is almost 600 pages, if not 600 pages. So I still have a lot left and I'm trying to almost finish it. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to read 300 pages today, but I will try to read as much as I can. Have I moved from this spot today? The answer is unclear, but I have read 400 pages of this book. I think this book is really starting to kind of shift gears in a direction that I'm finding to be very interesting. First part is definitely slow exposition. Second part, we're kind of on a quest journey being introduced. But what's always so cool about being kind of dropped into a new fantasy world is that our main character doesn't really know anything about it either. So they're trying to investigate and uncover things, and we kind of learn as they do. But it creates a lot of tension and anxiety as a reader, especially when our characters find themselves in like perilous situations. And that's definitely what's going on with Charlie, and how he's developing this book is that there seemingly is something much larger going on, and like even larger with what our character might have to do within this story, which I think is great. And what I mean by that is like this fantasy world has politics. It obviously has this sort of evil force, this evil ruler, but one, they had to get to that point. Two, there's all the people that have lived in this land and like they all have different backgrounds and stuff like that. So Charlie trying to uncover what in the world is going on is a huge part of this book. And as he kind of gets stuck deeper and deeper in this world, he has to like problem solve. And I don't know, the overall plot is really escalating and going in a direction I'm enjoying quite a bit. And honestly, I'm pretty hooked. Like I'm reading this book very quickly. Like again, the first part is slower, but I feel like once you kind of get into the meat of this story, it really picks up. I'm also gonna see if I can get the audiobook, because I'm just feeling like how this book is written and the style of it would be nice to listen to. So I'm curious how that is, and I'll report back. I'm hoping I can, I'm gonna see if it's on script. I doubt I can get it from the library. I'm sure the wait list is like 500 people, but it's always worth a quick looky look. But now I'm gonna make lunch because it is lunchtime. I have leftover tortellini from dinner earlier this week, so obviously those are being heated up and I can't wait. I said the leftover tortellinis and leftover jarred pasta sauce. I was excited to try that carbone pasta sauce. It was on sale, so I bought it. And honestly, it's pretty good. But lunch is done. Y'all, I'm in desperate need of this coffee. I wonder, oh no, we picked up some Starbucks holiday blend coffee, which, how fun, but I think we're saving that for a little longer. But I'm gonna pour a cup of this and we're gonna do a bit of a reading sprint. All right, it's time to ignore all the boxes in my house and sit here and read more Fairy Tale. Before I do a reading sprint, let's do an update. All right, so this book really went from 0 to 60 on the like dark scale very, very fast. The entire time, this book has always felt like it's had the possibility of it being a really intense read, but you're kind of just like waiting to see like how far Stephen King was going to take it. Well, I've encountered a scenario where I'm like, this is very dark very quickly, but it's interesting, like it's gruesome, I can't put it down, but like holy crap, like the escalation from where we were like on page 1 of this book to just taking care of an old dog and like hanging out with an old guy to like where we are now is like pretty wild. Like talk about a slippery slope of a situation that this Charlie kid has found himself in. That's all I gotta say. friends, let's go ahead and do a full wrap up of Fairy Tale by Stephen King, my very first Stephen King book. I've actually finished it at the point of wrapping up this vlog because I really wanted to give like total complete thoughts and feelings. This book was interesting. I feel like conceptually speaking, I really enjoyed it, and I will say, reading the reviews, a lot of people say this is not necessarily a good place to start with Stephen King, but I feel like reading preferences, genres are so personal. So like for me, a lover of fantasy, also a lover of portal fantasy, it seemed to make sense as a place to start. Well, I would say Stephen King's writing was very approachable. I found the descriptions of the world and even the pacing to work pretty well. But I think the strength of this book was the concept. I think this idea of like a young kid stumbling upon a portal to another world, and all of a sudden they find themselves on this adventure of a lifetime trying to fight evil. Like they never saw themselves sort of taking on the mantle of, you know, an entire group of people, but they are, and they also have a dog companion to kind of lead them along the way, and that is structurally kind of what this story is. I'm a little torn about this book. Half of me liked it. I found it to be very engaging. I obviously read it really quickly. I don't really have too many qualms with the writing style, and what he did give us, I enjoyed. That being said, I can't help but take a step back and like kind of wish there was a bit more, and let me elaborate a bit. Obviously, with being introduced with this new world, we're sent to a new place, and I really feel like there was a bit of a missed opportunity with having a bit more adventure and quest situation in this book. Follow Charlie as he's moving through this new world, but there really isn't a lot of exploration, and honestly, I would say like him sort of moving through this new place is rather limited. And then we're quickly kind of shuffled into a new plot arc like within the story itself. And I was really hoping we would see lots of different landscapes, lots of different people, especially because I feel like this is pulling on those nostalgia kind of middle grade adventure vibes. So on that part, like what we got, I liked, but I also wish there was a bit more exploration. Interestingly, in the writing, I do feel like this was fantasy, but it definitely had like horror, gross elements to it too, especially when the plot started to heat up. Part of that I liked. Another part of it, I felt like some of the imagery chosen was like a little cheap, and I just feel like could have achieved the same sort of scariness without the direction that Stephen King went. I'll also say in terms of characters, it's hard for me to fault the characters because on the surface, I think everyone is very likable, but I also say everything felt very surface level. Charlie, as our main character, is so vanilla. Like, he is a good kid through and through, but I wouldn't say he's like my new favorite character of all time. I just felt like there was a missing piece of like personality, humor, or even just living in his head. I just never really felt that deeply connected to him. Like obviously I was rooting for him, but he was just sort of a boring person to follow in this book. And as the story progressed and people kind of lauded him obviously for a lot of the things he did, like I also found those interactions to be almost like a little annoying in some regard. And then the last thing I will comment on is that this book is definitely structured in multiple arcs. First, we obviously have the exposition. Stephen King really took his time kind of introducing us to Charlie, Charlie's world, the people in Charlie's life that he really cares about, setting up his like moral compass as we follow him through like the rest of the story. I actually think it wasn't too slow in the beginning. I felt like it was necessary, and I actually appreciated the care that Stephen King took. So I do feel like we have to have a bit of a buy-in for the rest of the story to play out, if that makes sense. The beginning of the exploration of this world I also liked. We met a variety of characters kind of in this other place. I liked that. I loved seeing him explore all of that. Honestly, I wanted more. And then we sort of reached the end evil destination, and then the major climax occurs. Parts of this I liked. Parts of it felt a little fast, a little underdeveloped, or just kind of like underwhelming in terms of the actual like major villain, in terms of how everything was resolved, if you know what I mean. And partly I think it felt like a book that should have been like many adventures leading up to this big boss fight. But instead, because it is a standalone, it was kind of like there's only one boss fight, so it just didn't feel like, for a world that's been under this evil force for so long, for it to be kind of quote unquote easily handled in the way that it was. It just didn't feel like fully satisfying, if you know what I mean. I feel like that sounded like a lot of criticism, but I really wanted to like give in-depth thoughts and feelings, again, because this is my first Stephen King book, but I did like it. And I feel like based on the style, based on the fact that he's writing some interesting fantasy worlds, there's other fantasy books that I know he's released that I'm curious to pick up. I would also say if you're intimidated by Stephen King, don't be. His style, again, as I said, is very, very approachable. I also thought this book was solid. I thought it was good and entertaining. I don't think it was perfect, but I obviously read it really, really quickly, and I can't fault it for the entertainment factor, and I'd probably give it like a 3.75 stars. Like, it was solidly good. It didn't blow my mind, it didn't blow me away, but I did enjoy it quite a bit. So that is my final thoughts and feelings on Fairy Tale by Stephen King, my very first Stephen King book, and I will see you soon with another vlog soon. Bye!